start talking.
We're on.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Hello, I'm Jessica, and I will be interviewing Dino, also known as digi2t, on the do-it-yourself forums. We are making this video for petey twofinger. So, Dino, what's your first memory where music clicked in for you, and how old were you?
I was probably around 12 or 13 years old. My uncle came to live with us, and he had a lot of records and LPs, and I remember the first record that he played for us was Peter Frampton Comes Alive, and he followed that up with Nazareth's Greatest Hits, and that really blew my mind, and that's where I think it was about a year later I announced to my mother that I was quitting 7 years of piano lessons to play guitar.
She must have been so happy about that. What was your first live music experience?
I think I was 7 or 8 years old. My parents took me to the Nutcracker Suite, the ballet, and I just remember that orchestra, that big orchestra in the orchestra pit, and the sound that came out of that pit was just amazing. It was unreal.
And what was the last compact disc of music that you purchased?
Canada's Own Tragically Hip. It's a double album, best of compilation called Your Favorites.
Okay. What was the last album that you downloaded?
Never downloaded an album, actually. I've downloaded individual tunes, but never a complete album.
What would you say is your least favorite genre of music?
Remixes. I hate remixes. I can't, it's like, write your own damn music, people. Stop ripping off other people's music.
So like when modern people take old songs and then...
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's just like you hear like Sting's Every Breath You Take and they rap over it.
Oh.
That's pretty sad.
Okay. What is your favorite genre of music?
Everything else. I can appreciate Brad Paisley's picking as much as I can appreciate Steve Vai.
Okay. What was the last concert or live music band event that you've witnessed?
It was quite a few years ago now. I think it was back in 2002. And it was Nazareth. They were playing a club here in Montreal, and I was really amazed. The singer sounded exactly like he did off all the albums. His voice hadn't changed in all these years. They were really, really good.
Who is your favorite guitar player, or players if you have more than one?
I'm more into the guitar players that tend to use a lot of effects, so I tend to gravitate towards a Robert Fripp or Adrian Belew or The Edge. But I also appreciate players that can be very melodic in their playing. You know, not like shredders. You know, Neil Young pops into mind. I mean, you know, he can do a guitar solo with one note, just repeating it and bending it. I can appreciate all genres of guitar players.
Okay. Who impresses you the most with the use of guitar effects?
Fripp, Belew, and The Edge are my top three. Those guys really have a way of creating soundscapes with a guitar and their effects.
And do you play any instruments?
Well, just electric guitar. That's I tried clarinet when I was in high school, and but I think that was just a cover up to try and get into the jazz band so I could play guitar, but that failed. So I played piano when I was much younger, between the ages of 7 and 14. But I don't play anymore. I just play guitar now.
Are you or were you ever in a band?
Yes and yes. And it's still the same band. when I was in college, I met my friend Todd Stones, and I still remember the message that he posted on the bulletin board. It was keyboardist looking for a guitarist to transcend the boundaries of the imagination. And we played all through college, and we lost touch for many years when I moved away, and now we're back together again, and we had a little bit of a hiatus lately, but we're planning on recording again this summer.
Okay, so you've made recordings before?
Well, we couldn't afford to make recordings when we were in college, but when I got back into music, I built my own studio, and we started recording.
Okay. What are your hobbies besides the do-it-yourself effects?
Motorcycling. I own a 1990 Goldwing, and my girlfriend and I, we enjoy going on for rides and on the weekends or even after supper.
Okay, that's nice. What was your first experience with electronics?
I think I was about 10 years old. My father gave me a little kit. It was an AM crystal radio kit that you put together yourself, and you had that little wire that you would wrap around the metal pipe in your house, and you had a little earphone that you could stick in your ear, and that little dial, and you could pick up all your AM stations that were within 50 miles.
Okay. Do you have any formal training or mentoring in electronics?
In electronics per se, no. I'm an electromechanic by trade, so I work on industrial machines. There's industrial computers. There's relay logic and such, but no formal training insofar as pure hardcore as electronics is concerned. I'm really more of a hack than anything else.
What was your first DIY experience, and how old were you?
DIY. In electronics, like I said, I was probably about 10 years old. But in DIY in general, I was always DIYing stuff. My father was a real hobby master, and he loved to do things himself and fix things and build things himself, and I was always his gopher, so I kind of grew up in that DIY environment, whether it was putting, wiring a motorcycle or building a table or anything around the house. We always, tended to do it ourselves or build it ourselves.
So was your father who inspired you?
Yeah. He inspired me he inspired my curiosity and to be curious about how to do things. Insofar as electronics is concerned, I think that just grew out of a need to just find ways to make my own pedals and get my own tones out of my guitar.
Okay. Can you explain the entire process you use to complete a build, briefly?
Well, I do all of my work on VeroBoard. I've bought the odd kit here and there, which is a ready-made PCB, and I just either it comes with all the parts and you populate it, or you buy the parts separately. But most of my projects are all done on VeroBoard. So basically, I tend to gravitate towards the old effects and the really rare ones. So if I can find a schematic, then what I'll do is I'll trace the schematic out onto Vero. If it's relatively simple, I'll just go ahead and build it if it's verified. And if it's not verified, then I'll breadboard it and I'll test it. And then I'll create my layout with a computer program called Do-It-Yourself Layout Creator. And then I'll just go ahead with the build. I'll cut the VeroBoard and populate the VeroBoard, and then test it some more, and then box it. And that's it. Done.
Okay. And what was the easiest build you've ever completed?
The easiest build was the first kit I ever bought was a General Guitar Gadgets Fox Tone machine. and you basically, it comes all complete with the box and everything. I mean, the box is even pre-drilled for you, so basically you just throw the parts on the board and just make sure your soldering's good, and put the board in and just follow the instructions, put it together. And a couple of hours I had it plugged in and I was playing with it, and that was pretty easy.
Okay, and the most challenging?
The most challenging build was one that I did lately called the Infinite Phase. I came across the schematics on the internet, and I decided to go crazy on it, and I transferred it onto, I made a Vero layout for it, which was huge, absolutely huge. I don't know what came over me. I probably temporary insanity, but it worked out. But it was really a really complex build. A lot of parts, big board, a lot of wiring.
And does that last experience bother you?
Does it bother me? No. It doesn't bother me, because in the end, I mean, it was several weeks of work, but it was successful. And even if it wasn't, I don't think it would have bothered me, because I probably would have learned a lot from it. You know.
Okay, and how do you deal with failure when you make a build?
Failure is the learning curve. Failure is where we learn most of what's involved in the process of building a pedal. You can't let it discourage you if it doesn't work. It'll sharpen your troubleshooting skills, and then when you do find out what the problem is, more often than not, you won't be making that same mistake twice. So that's what I get from it.
Okay. Do you have any quick do's and don'ts for beginners?
Do's and don'ts. Do's, ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Sign up on the forums and look us up. And I've always said there's no such thing as a stupid question. There's only stupid answers. So you know, R.G. Keen, great pedal guru, recently replied to a post on the forum that if he was bored with answering questions, he wouldn't show up on the forum. So, and he's been around forever. So ask a lot of questions, learn how to read diagrams, you know, figure out, do your research and find out what different components do, and or how they're represented on the diagram, and don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to smoke some stuff, but just stay with it. You know, the rewards are great.
When you first started with DIY effects, where did you get your parts from?
Like I said, the first kit that I bought, all the parts were included. When I started buying my parts separately, I already knew about electronic suppliers from my work, such as digi2t and Newark Electronics. And slowly, as I started scouring eBay for parts, I found that I could get parts cheaper there. And today, I guess the great majority of my parts come from Tata. They have a lot of most everything you'll need, and very, very good prices.
Okay. Do you have any favorite tools that you like working with?
Yes, my digital multimeter. That's my number one go-to tool. That gets used all the time. As soon as I sit down at the bench, I turn it on, and it's always being used. I have this phobia of putting the wrong value resistor in a board, so I tend to always check my resistor before I stick it in the board. Even if it says it's a 330K on the package, when I pull it out, I double check it to make sure, because I have had resistors in the wrong package before, and that's not fun to troubleshoot when you light up your effect and it's not working properly, to find out that you stuck the wrong resistor in there. So my DMM gets really used a lot.
Okay. Are there any tools that you have currently that you regret buying?
None. Every tool I buy serves a purpose. I don't buy tools just on a whim. When I buy a tool, it's because I've had a need, and some tools might not get used all the time, but when they're there, when I do need them, I'm glad I have them.
Okay. Is there anything you know now that you wish you would have known then when you first started?
Yeah, I should have paid more attention in school. Math and sciences, I think I would have been much better off for it today. Like I said, I don't have any formal electronics training, but I think if I'd paid a little more attention in school, I'd be a lot smarter insofar as a lot of the electronic theory is concerned.
Do you have a favorite component or a favorite type of component?
Favorite. I like Vactrols. I think they're neat. I think using light to control resistance is a neat concept. That's always fascinated me. Neutron 3 circuit. Ronan out in Australia there, he found a workaround using LEDs and LDRs for the electroharmonics talking pedal. The dual gang pot that was in the original is you just can't get it anymore. And Ronan was smart enough to figure out how to use 2 LDRs and 2 LEDs to get around that. So it's a neat little component.
And do you have a least favorite component?
Yeah, surface mount devices. Those things are murder to solder in. I've only worked with them one time in the XP series and the Digitech XP series pedals, and they're a really you need a steady hand and a good magnifying glass and a very good soldering iron. They're just a pain to work with. They're so tiny.
What's your favorite circuit? But not necessarily a circuit. An effect could be an element of effect.
The LED LDR combination in the Neutron 3. Just the way that circuit is set up, I find is really neat. How it controls the filtering. It's a really neat circuit.
Is there anything you eat or snack on while you work?
Yeah, solder fumes and coffee.
Do you like listening to music while you work? And if you do, what kind of music?
No, usually it's not music. Usually I have the TV going in the background. Whether it's The Mentalist or Criminal Minds or something like that, or 48 Hours, I usually have that in the background playing when I'm doing assembly. When I'm doing tracing, when I'm building transferring a schematic onto a layout or building a layout, usually I prefer it to be more quiet. When I'm tracing a circuit or verifying a circuit, I'll usually do it alone, when I've got the house to myself, and I'll sit down and it's nice and quiet because I need to concentrate and make sure that everything is going where it's supposed to go.
What's your stumbling block?
My stumbling block is electronic theory, the hardcore theory, how op-amp theory, especially op-amp theory. I'm still kind of foggy on that. I do a lot of reading and I do a lot of research, and I try to understand it the best I can. And usually it's not until I put it on a breadboard and play with it that it kind of clicks in my head as to what is doing what. I'm not the type of person that can just open a book and look at a picture or a diagram and read the techno-babble and understand what's going on. I'm more visual and more tactile. I have to do it to understand what's going on.
Do you have a favorite modification for store-bought models or DIY design?
Store-bought models? Well, the Digitech XP series of pedals, the work that Government Lackey and I did on the XP All. I think that's my favorite mod. Putting all the 4 XP series effects into one box. That was a lot of fun to work on, and that's a great mod.
Okay. You probably have a collection of instruments. So, what's your favorite instrument amongst those?
My favorite would be my Dillian Explorer. It's a copy of the Gibson Carina Explorer. They stopped making them, I think, back in 2002, probably because they probably got lawsuit or threatened with a lawsuit from Gibson. That's my workhorse guitar, because it's also I also use a guitar synthesizer. So I took a GK2 pickup assembly and I took it apart and I routed out underneath the pick guard, and I actually embedded the board for the pickup inside the guitar. So the pickup is integrated into the guitar with the 13-pin plug side by side with the 1/4-inch plug. So you don't really see any of the GK2 on there, and it's a great guitar. It plays wonderfully well, and I can get all kinds of tones out of it.
And do you have a favorite amp?
As a standalone amp, that would be my Ampeg G212. It's big, it's heavy, and it's really, really loud, but it doesn't matter how loud you play it, it's always clean. I'm not a tube amp aficionado. I stick with solid state amps, and they have to be very clean, because I don't like the amp coloring my tone or my sound. I like the effect to I like the sound of the effect. I don't want the effect to be either pushing the amp or the amp coloring the tone coming through it.
Okay. What would be your favorite store-bought effect?
My favorite store-bought effect. That would have to be my floor processor, my Digitech GNX3. I've used that. I use that a lot for playing and for recording. There's a lot of I find there's a lot of different tones in there and a lot of different effects that I can use.
What's your favorite DIY effect?
My favorite DIY effect right now, because it's fairly new in the collection, would be the infinite phase. It's just a crazy box. The amount of the different sounds you can get out of it is unreal. The phasing is just incredible. My Ludwig Phase II clone I really like as well. And insofar as fuzzes is concerned, I would have to say either it would be a toss-up between my WEM Project 5 fuzz clone or the Gemini 3 dual fuzz clone.
Okay. What's your favorite complex signal chain or series of effects?
That would be fuzz pedal into a wah, and then that would go through my Korg SDD 3300 for some chorusing, and then everything that I run ultimately ends up going through a MPE14 MIDI stereo equalizer, and then a BBE sonic maximizer, and then that goes and then it ends up getting pushed out by a QSC 1450, because I run a stereo rig. So I use the QSC into two 2x12 cabinets with Texas Heat speakers, 12-inch Texas Heats.
Okay. Do you have a favorite manufacturer of guitar effects?
Yeah, Digitech. I like their stuff. I like tones you can get out of it, and I find that my first floor processor was an RP7, and then an RP2000. I have the GNX3 now, and I've always tended to gravitate towards them. I like their stuff.
Do you have a person in the country of whom you look up to, or admire, or respect?
Oh my God, that list would go on forever. I think if we're talking about big guns, that would I would call them the four horsemen of the pedal apocalypse. R.G. Keane, PRR, Mark Hammer, Steve Daniels, not in any particular order. Those guys are just amazing, and not only in the amount of knowledge that they have, but just the fact that they're so patient, and they always find a way to explain it to to people, to the unwashed masses like myself, in a way that we can understand it. Insofar as builders are concerned, there's Taylor, there's Ronan, there's Slacker, Dead Astronaut, Lucifer's Trip, that guy just knows fuzzes intimately, Gus Smalley, and anyway, I could go on for days and days and days, the amount of people that I look up to on the forum. And most of all, Jimmy Photon, because that guy can rock a beard like nobody's business.
What would be one thing you would change about the community, if you could?
Nothing per se, but I think maybe as a community we should be trying to draw in some younger talent. Today, I mean, we live in a push-button society. You buy something, you use it, it doesn't work anymore, you throw it away. Nobody builds anything anymore or tries to fix anything anymore. And I know that, I mean, just the other day I was reading on the forum, there's a 16-year-old kid out in Israel, and he's gotten into building pedals, and now he wants to sell them. I mean, that's more power to him, you know. I mean, I'd like to see an effort towards getting the younger generation involved in do-it-yourself and building and learning how to build stuff. Not even, doesn't even have to be pedals, but I mean, you know, just if you've got a nephew that, you know, wants to build his first guitar or something like that, I mean, you know, by all means help them out and get them involved.
How do you feel about Mojo?
Well, your mother says I've got lots, but I take that with a big, huge grain of salt. Next question.
If there was a genie in a bottle who gave out guitar effects, what would he bring?
An Axe Effects 2. That's got to be the be-all to end-all of guitar effects. That would really clean out a lot of stuff in my rack.
Tell me about the one that got away.
An original Fox guitar synthesizer Model 9. It was on eBay. It was not working, but having already cloned it, I knew the circuit, and I decided that I would try to go after it, and if I could get it, I would, you know, repair it and then turn around and sell it and maybe try and make a profit. I was late by just a few seconds on the button to buy it, and somebody beat me out. Now the ironic thing is that the clone that I had made, I had posted some videos on my YouTube channel, and lo and behold, a few days after the auction ended, a gentleman contacts me through my YouTube channel, telling me that he had just recently purchased a Fox guitar synthesizer Model 9 on eBay, and it wasn't working, and he saw my video, and can I repair it for him? Which I did, and then sent it back to him, and he kind of had a love-hate relationship with it, and then he turned it around and sold it, and it got damaged in shipping, and now the new buyer has contacted me again to repair it. So it's really weird. It got away, but for some reason I've made money on money that I never even had to spend. Anyway, there you go. Life's funny that way.
Oh. What is the project that you're the most proud of?
I would have to say the Ludwig Phase II clone collaboration. I think that project felt like it was about a year, and between RG, Jimmy, Kepi, and myself, there we ended up finally deciphering that hen's tooth, and RG was nice enough to build a PCB layout for it, and we got boards done, and we finally ended up with a working clone, and truthfully, I think the clone sounds better than the original. I have an original and I have the clone, and to my ears, the clone is an improved version of the original. So that's I think that's the project that really takes the cake for me.
Okay. Do you have any projects planned for the near future that you would be willing to share with our viewers?
Right now, I'm awaiting a Schumann PLL, very rare box. Some people call it vaporware, but I managed to find a gentleman in the U.S. who was gracious enough to entrust his Schumann PLL to me, and it's going to be here soon. And I'll finally get into the innards and find out how it ticks and get a schematic and a layout of that. So stay tuned to the Hen's Tooth Cafe, because there's more coming down the pipe.
Okay, and finally, what do you see for the future of the industry in processing guitar effects?
Right now, the big thing is iPods and iPads. I know digi2t has a floor processor that incorporates an iPad into it. They also have stomp boxes that you could use your iTouch or your iPhone to transfer information into it. So you can have a chorus, a distortion, a fuzz, or whatever effect you really want. You know, you can download the code off the net and transfer it into your box, and you're off to the races. TC Electronics with their tone print, same principle. You can, I think it's with a USB connection, and I know there's several artists, one of which is John Petrucci. He's collaborating with them, and I think he's worked with them to develop certain tones that you can download from their site, and you can have John Petrucci's sound in your pedal. That's really, I think, the future. That's the big thing right now that the industry is leaning to, is downloadable code that you can just plug into a generic box, if you will, and basically make it whatever you will it to be.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say?
I'd like to thank you and for conducting the interview on Petey Twofinger's behalf. I'd like to extend many thanks to Petey Twofinger for working on producing these interviews and this series. And I'd like to say that I'm very, very honored that I was asked to participate. Considering the enormous talent that's out there. I'm just one little cog in the wheel, and just trying to do my little bit, and thank you very much for having me.
Okay. This was Jessica reporting for Petey Twofinger's interview series on Do-It-Yourself for Pedal Blitzers. Thank you.